Hi everyone, it's Rachel and Anthony.
Hello.
From Don't Crop Me Now. It's the 2nd of July and I'm back for this month. So let's have a look at our monthly plot tour. I'm here on 5B and this is one of our half plots. And for the last month we have managed to catch up quite a bit with our planting. There's a couple of gaps, but not too many. So let's see what we've got in and how it's doing. So if we start over here and we can look at these two raised beds. We've got a lot of brassicas in on this plot, and over here we have got the Brussels sprouts. They are doing really well and looking really healthy. We did start off by putting some canes in for each individual plant. That's quite important because Brussels sprouts do not like to have their roots rocked by the wind, and as those plants grow you want to be able to tie them in to keep them stable. We decided on this bed to put in a mixture of the winter brassicas and the winter leeks. One of the things we tend to have is when it gets to winter, we have bits of winter brassicas all over the plot, and then we end up with lots of different beds with nets on. So by doing this, we thought they're all under the same net. It'll be easier for us to clear different areas on the plot. So that's why we have got here the Brussels sprouts, the winter leeks, and right over this side, some purple sprouting broccoli. On this bed just in front here, we have got the more summer brassicas. So we have got calabrese and cauliflowers. And again, they are looking really healthy. These were actually planted I think it was a week after these ones. So you can sort of see the difference in growth on those, but overall they are looking really good. We use this EnviroMesh type netting, the fine sort of plastic netting. We have found that it's the only thing that's really sturdy enough to stand up to some of the winter conditions that we tend to get here in Manchester, North England. If we travel in this direction on the plot, we filled this tiny space and we put some red cabbages in. They don't tend to grow quite as big, so the netting doesn't need to be quite so high, and it just filled this space next to these beans. And these beans are the hoppy black beans. They are dwarf beans and they are predominantly grown for drying. We have got lots of them in there, and you know they are looking really healthy, and I think we're going to get a good crop from those. If we have a look at the bed in front, it's definitely a little bit sparse. So we can see that we do have areas where we have got some nice rows of things growing, but the germination of some of our seeds wasn't brilliant on these salad crops, and I do think the seeds were a little bit old. That is the reason why we try to do as much seed collecting as we can. For example here, it really makes a big difference the fresher your seed is. This is actually some kale that we are letting go to seed, and we're trying to do that as much as we can to try and get those germination rates really good without having to spend lots of money every year on fresh seed. It does mean that we've got a bit of a gap in this section, and I'm going to try and resow a few things today. So it's the beginning of July, you still can sow quite a few things, so I'll resow some of these salad crops, things like spring onions as well. We will do that this afternoon. In front of this bed we have got a bed which is flowers. So these are mainly chrysanthemums in the middle here. We've got some lavender that hopefully will make a nice little lavender border similar to what we have on plot 4 in this direction, and there's just a few extra flowers at the back here just to fill those gaps. One of the things is I've been reading about growing chrysanthemums. I have grown them once before. I would say we didn't get we got flowers, but they weren't completely amazing. So we were looking at how you are meant to pinch the tops out of chrysanthemums to allow them to split into lots and lots and lots of different stems to give you that high number of flowers. And that's one of the things that I'm going to try and really do this year, and I'm hoping then this bed will be full of chrysanthemums. These are actually varieties that should be able to stay outside in the UK type weather. We do have ground that sort of drains really well over winter. That isn't usually a problem. We do overwinter daily tubers quite well, so I'm hoping this will become an established flower bed rather than having to plant this up sort of annually each year. Behind here we do have the onions, which are looking really good now. They are starting to just sort of bulk out into an onion shape, the bulb on the bottom. So really pleased with those. I think on the last video we were talking about how the magpies were a particular problem and we were having to uncover cover up and then uncover quite a lot of these crops, and you can see that these onions have really recovered from being covered up and a little bit squashed early in their growth. Over here we have got beetroot, and that is looking quite good. You see the germination is pretty spot on in most areas. I don't tend to thin this down. I find that they sort of thin themselves really as you pick out the roots. But interestingly, if we look closely at this bed, you will find out that there are a few extra things that have grown that have been self-seeded from last year. We've definitely got a few fennel plants that are growing. We've got some parsley plants, and we have definitely got some coriander within there. And I have left those in. I'm just going to let them come up where they want to in that bed, just keep them under control. But hopefully, again, it's free crops. Even when you try to make sure that you mulch your beds over, those little seeds, they're like weed seeds, they will germinate. But obviously that is free plants, so we're okay with that. We are having a go this year at growing cucumbers in a few different ways. Normally we have them growing really well in the polytunnel. The reason why I've decided not to predominantly do that is because by the time we get through to picking all the cucumbers, we're right usually into October, and I want to be able to use the polytunnel for the overwintering crops and setting up crops that will grow throughout winter. And to do that means I don't really want to have the cucumbers in there. So we've decided, as a little bit of an experiment, that firstly we are going to grow some cucumbers, if Anthony follows me, in this polycube here, and they are growing pretty well. This was a bit of an experiment. So we are growing these cucumbers in a bit of recycled compost. So within the tub it has got rabbit and guinea pig bedding, and then we have got a bit of recycled compost. We've then got a bit of rotted manure on the top, and then we have topped off with some sheep's fleeces that I got free from a local children's farm. And then we are growing this in here, so it has a little bit of protection, but it's not really like the same as being inside a full greenhouse or polytunnel. It seems to be growing quite well like this, so that's a good experiment. We'll see how that goes. But we have also planted some cucumbers outside on plot 5B, and that is here. So you can see we have planted these cucumbers onto this a little bit of a higgledy-piggledy frame. Some of it has fallen off, and that's why that plant is currently on the ground. I will tie those back in, and hopefully the cucumbers will grow up this frame. They seem to be growing. I don't know how well these will crop outside, but it's worth that experiment for us. To be perfectly honest, we've got a few cucumbers within the greenhouse. We've got a few in this polycube. You don't really need that many cucumber plants, so it's more as an experiment this year. There's a little bit of a space still where I'm standing right here, so there are a few things that we could perhaps put in to be able to fill these gaps. Other than that, actually on this plot 5B, we do have a lot of the fruit area, which is looking pretty good. So we can see that on some of these trees, we have got fruit setting. This is a conference pear tree, which is looking really nice. And the apple, which is the grafted apple tree on the back, is also doing well. This area at the bottom, we've got a lot of cuttings and small plants. It's looking a bit messy for my liking around here, and I'm feeling that I might use one of the spaces on the beds where we do have a bit of space we haven't planted out to perhaps put some of these pots and just use that as a growing area, just so this is a little bit easier to access. That's probably my view, because I just like things really tidy, but it's not very easy to get access to these and make sure that they are well watered. I mean, the benefit is that they do get a bit of shade from this tree, but I just feel like in my mind I want to tidy up a little bit more here. Let's have a look at the greenhouse that's on the back of 5B. So I'm in the greenhouse on 5B, and for a long time we've called this the chilli house because we predominantly grow chilies in this greenhouse. It is a 6x8 greenhouse, so it's not completely massive, but you can fit quite a few plants in here. I did actually say I was not going to grow as many chilies this year because we had so many last year. Since we've been planting them in these self-watering pots, the plants themselves have just got so big. But that sort of hasn't happened, and I still managed to plant a lot of chili plants in here. We've got this row that goes all the way around the outside, and then we've got a smaller row in the middle. I don't know whether as these plants start to grow, because last year they were so big, whether we need to remove this middle row, which are the smaller dwarf plants, and perhaps put them in the path on the polytunnel, just so we have enough room in here. The other thing that we are putting here is some luffer plants, which I am growing as a bit of an experiment. We have grown luffers before. We've never managed to get any luffer fruits, but we had them in the polytunnel. It is much hotter in this greenhouse, which is why the chilies love it, I guess. But hopefully those luffers will like it as well. We do have some stringers that are going up and over the top of the greenhouse, and we will tie these luffers into that. So the idea is the luffers will grow in this direction. As you can see at the moment, some of those side shoots are going where they want. I do need to pick them in and tie them up so they go up towards the roof. A lot of our chilies are a little bit behind on where they would have been last year, because some of the plants that we had really had a problem with aphids this year. We haven't had that problem in this the same level for ever, really, from what I can remember, but the plants really got bad aphids and it really slowed down their growth. But as you can see, they have picked up really well, and they are looking pretty good. I do think we are going to get good crops again, maybe just not as early as we did last year, but I do anticipate by the time it gets to September in here that some of these plants are going to be up here again, and we are going to be swimming in chilies. So now plot 4, which is our main plot and the plot that we've had the longest. And hopefully the sound isn't too bad, because the wind is really getting up here in Manchester. So right at the front of plot 4, we have got the flower border. And you know what? I am pretty pleased with this for this year. It's looking okay. We've definitely got enough sort of perennial stuff within there that's filling it out. One of the problems we've had for many years is we haven't really got the perennials set up properly. They've either been too big and have got a bit overgrown, or we've had too many gaps and had to put lots of annuals in, which can be relatively expensive. So I think that we've done a decent job of that, and I'm quite pleased, really. It's looking quite pretty. We just had a few annuals that we put on this corner because I seem to have managed to leave a really big gap here. But if we go on to the main plot, I was talking about that sheep's wool, wasn't I, over there? We have got bags of this sheep's wool, a lot actually, which we all got free, and it's brilliant for both mulching and composting. So it's been stored all in this compost area at the moment, and we are going to put this as a mulch around quite a lot of the plants, some for our community plot and some for our own plot. So if we continue on to the plot, and you will see we will have some weeds, because I have not weeded this plot before doing this video, so we can show you luckily we've had this plot a reasonable amount of time, no digs, we don't get many weeds, but this bed was actually dug over not last season but the season before, because we had a problem with some ground elder coming into the side of the plot. And you can see that means that we get quite a lot of these annual weeds that are popping up. Hasn't particularly been well mulched on this bed because we ran out of our top mulch. So you can see there's a lot of fat hen coming up, so we are going to have to deal with that by hoeing. But we have planted some pumpkins here, and these are just your standard sort of carving pumpkins. Two at this direction, because we learned something new actually when we went from one of our plot holders, talking about the main vine of the pumpkin always follows the direction of the sun, which is why we planted them here, to allow them to go some way in that sort of direction to follow the sun and to grow in that direction. Hopefully they'll be a little bit more orderly this year because of that. Behind us here we've got beans, and these beans are growing quite well. We did have to put quite a few extra bean seeds directly in the ground because it was so hot when we planted them out that some of them just didn't come up initially. But now that they are growing quite well, you can see the difference where the ones that went in earlier, where they did germinate well in the heat, and these ones that have gone in later. And we have loads of self sort of seeded coriander it smells really strong actually, that's come up here. And we would just eat that. That was because we had one of these small beds here just to my left that was growing coriander. This one where we've got the giant cabbage in this year, and the seeds just love to set everywhere, and so I've left them in there because I think there'll be a nice crop to have. There's a few weeds there as well that we need to pull out, but not too bad. If we look over to this side, I've got two giant cabbage within this section. We have to net lots of things here, and I know that last month Anthony was moaning about the magpies, but the pigeons are also problems for the brassicas that we have. We used to have a saying on here which was net it or forget it, and we were usually talking about brassicas here. So that's what a lot of this netting is for. And these are the two giant cabbage, which are quite small at the moment, but hopefully we'll see how we do with those later in the season. Underneath here we have got our sweet corn, and this sweet corn we have had to cover up because of the magpies. It's nearly at the top of this section here, so I'm not sure what I'm going to have to do, because I'm going to have to either increase the height or do something. I feel if I take them off, something is going to happen to my precious plants. We also have problems with squirrels that come along and eat the cobs once they get ripe. So ideally these will be much better growing in a fruit cage, but we don't have any space for that at the moment, so I'm going to have to brainstorm how we're going to manage that. But the plants themselves do look okay. Here we have just got our rootstocks for our apple pruning, which are growing pretty fine, so they will just continue to do that over the rest of the season, and it will be a job for probably next year, I should think. And if we get on to the potatoes, and so the potatoes, I mean, I am 5'3.5" and you can see these potatoes now are big. That is one of the things, if you grow potatoes in pots and they're not very deep down in the earth, then they will have lots and lots of top growth. And that is why we built these potato frames. And I am really pleased with these. They are doing a brilliant job of supporting the potato plants. These are our second early potatoes that we grow as a main crop. And on the other side here, we have another variety, which is actually a second early as well. These ones are Picasso and the other ones are Charlotte this year. And even though we're a second early, we tend to pick them as more our early potatoes. So it probably will be interesting over the next few weeks if we start having a look at in a couple of the early the Charlotte potato buckets, to see whether we're getting any of those small potatoes. But the plants certainly look really healthy and are growing well. The early ones, the Charlottes, have flowered, and these ones are just starting to flower here. So that's always a good sign that the plant is moving on in terms of its growth. We have more onions here, and these onions again are starting to form that onion bulb and are looking really nice. On this section here we have a few more onions, and in the back we have got multi-sown shallots. They're a little bit smaller here. They actually were planted quite a bit later, and so let's see how they catch up. If they catch up, I don't know what sort of size they're going to grow to. Behind here we have our carrots, and I am so pleased with these carrots this year. So you can see that the germination on the carrots is really, really good. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 really good rows of carrots. We bought this sort of carrot netting to go around the outside, because as we'll get over, and I think we've mentioned in a few other videos, that we left our carrot frame around the parsnips that grew, and then we wanted to collect the seed. So I needed some sort of other barrier for the carrot fly. So I bought this. It is a bit flimsy, but I think it will do the job. And it is okay, and the carrots are definitely growing well, so fingers crossed it will work. On the back here we have some parsnips, and we sowed radish to mark the rows of the parsnips, and they look really, really healthy now. So I probably should have a good check of those to see if they're starting to bulb up, and then we need to harvest the radish and leave the parsnips to grow on. With the radish growing so well, you can't actually see if there's any parsnips in there. I did use fresh seeds, so I do hope there are some parsnips hiding, but I guess as we harvest that radish, we're going to find out. Just here we have got some spring cabbage, which hearted up and started to grow really, really late for us. And you can certainly see on this as an example, we were talking about having to cover up all the brassicas because of the pigeons. The effect really that the magpies are having on our plots, because there's so many magpies, we're getting less pigeons. And I thought there would be, I uncovered these and I expected them to all be sort of decimated within a day or so. And you know they're not, they haven't, and they continue to grow, and they are actually hearting up really good now. So I can't see much evidence at the moment of cabbage white caterpillars, or certainly not, it is a big problem. So we've managed to grow uncovered brassicas, which I can honestly say we've never managed to do on these plots before in the 20 years that we've been here. So that is showing what the magpies are doing really to the pigeon population. One of them had gone to seed, so we've let this go to seed just to collect the seed, and you can see how many of these seed pods you tend to get from one plant. So that will be a lot of spring cabbage seed, and I'm hoping that we can share that with some plot holders on our site as well. On here in this tiny little coal frame, we do have some spinach that I sowed. The germination again has not been great. It's grown here, but not so much here. So I would definitely need to put some more seed in on this. We've got some fat hen there, which is a weed. That is edible, a bit like spinach. So maybe I should let that grow and try it. I don't know, maybe. But we've only got about half the container really filled with spinach, which isn't great. Just actually looking behind there, you can see how well this is a fully formed cabbage, definitely here. You know what, I think I might pick that one today and then we might eat that in the week. That's looking really, really good. And behind it is more beans. These are beans predominantly for drying. They look like they're growing really well. They're reaching the top of the wigwams. If we get in here, a lot more evidence here of magpies. You can see that they pooped on the leaves because they sit on the top. We have sweet peas on this frame that are growing quite nicely. These are from our own saved seed and they are really quite pretty. Lots of different colours and they are growing quite well up the frame. So I'm hoping that as they continue to grow, it will look nice within this section. And I'm sure it will because they're certainly climbing anyway, which is brilliant. Just behind Anthony, we have our asparagus cage. And now that has fully gone to seed. That is part of the asparagus normal growing pattern. So the frame itself is doing a really good job of supporting that. So really, really pleased with that. We do need to weed a little bit in the bottom there, but it's not too bad. We will need to leave that till later in the season and then we can cut that down. All this growth now is putting that energy back into the roots. The rhubarb is now looking great. So the rhubarb was really struggling, I think, in the last video, and that is really because of the lack of rain. And now the rain's come in and you can see these big thick sticks of rhubarb. We could literally feed a village, I think, with rhubarb from this rhubarb patch. So we should start picking this and giving it away, really. Next to where I am here, we had some peas in here, which we did pick a few from early on, but I decided to uncover them to see whether they would manage to be uncovered. And although the pigeons are not seeming to find those brassicas over there, they most certainly found these peas. And we didn't really get many. So I have pulled them out. I am going to sow some more peas in this section. We'll mulch over on the bottom and sow a few more, probably more like the sugar snap varieties, so we can be eating those in autumn. And there are a few dwarf French beans just behind there that are the little yellow ones that are just starting to pod up, which is great. And if we continue on plot 4, we're now getting through to the recycled dahlia frame, which is working amazingly. It's doing a brilliant job of supporting these plants. And as you can see, we are getting the first few blooms. We leave all our dahlia tubers in here in northwest England in Manchester, which is quite unusual because Manchester is known for being very, very wet. And we certainly do get a lot of rain, but the ground here is very well draining. And so I leave these tubers in. I don't take them out. I find that's, for me, they're more likely to die when I do that. Maybe I don't store them very well. But as you can see, they have come up brilliantly and they are just starting to flower. So I am sure that we are going to get a great display there. Just behind me, the lavender is looking lovely and it's full, absolutely full of bees. So I'm really pleased with that. It always gives us a nice crop and I do like having the flowers around. In front of there, we've got a few courgette plants. Again, we don't normally net courgettes, but those magpies are taking a liking for pulling everything out. So that's what the net is, certainly until those plants become a little bit more established because they went in quite late, really. If we follow around to just behind the lavender, we have got these strawberry plants, which now they've got that good bit of rain are looking really, really healthy because they went in as a first crop last September. Then they are, well, this spring actually, they were taken last September. We didn't get a massive amount of strawberries off these because somehow, because I think it was so hot, a lot of the flowers were not setting properly. But the plants themselves look good and they are sending off some runners. They're really, really good quality upright plants which have big strawberry sweet berries on. So I think I will take some of these runners and we are going to extend into another bed, perhaps where we've got the spring cabbage actually. We might plant some of those runners into those beds to increase our strawberry stock for next year. Our little pond is looking okay. the lily actually opens the flowers when the sun's come out and looks really beautiful. One of the plans that I'm thinking to do for this winter is to extend this pond area and maybe to have two small ponds, like one and then one a bit higher up, and have this water fountain bit, get that working in some way. This rockery area that we've put in, we actually brought this recycle from our house when we took our old garden apart. It's on its last legs. If we look here, it's just about to fall apart. I don't think a lot of those wooden bricks are really very fixable. We may be able to use them in a different project, but I think I'm going to take that part, use some of the rocks that we've got within this rockery to do around a pond and somehow have a 2-level pond. That is my plan anyway. So that will what we'll be working on probably in around autumn, to try and make the pond area a little bit better. We'll see. I'm sure keep an eye out for that. We have got more leeks in here. These went in quite late as well, but more leeks. They're multi-sown leeks, looking good. Some kohlrabi here, which look really nice as well. And some really late sown broad beans at the back, which have really come on in the last couple of weeks. Then if we have a look towards the back of the plot, the sun's just decided it's going to come out, which is nice because it's going between very windy and wet weather here, and then spouts of sun. We have got some dwarf sunflowers which seem to have grown quite well. Some really late sown onions. These may not bulb up properly, but even if they're more like fat spring onions, that's fine. And we had this as a spare space, so I put them in. Again, they are netted just to allow them to root in properly, stop the magpies pulling it out. And when we're talking about our carrot frame, this is what I mean. So these are our parsnip plants, and you know they are actually a very beautiful and quite architectural type plant, really. You know, you could put this in an ornamental flower border. I think they're actually really quite pretty. We have got, I don't even know how many seeds we're going to have on this, like, feels like millions. But you can see that they have set the seeds properly here, and these will dry out, and I'm planning to collect these. And bearing in mind you only really want to grow parsnips from fresh seeds, we're probably only going to need half that one amount there to do our plot. So it's a lot of seeds, so I will find some way to share those as much as I can as well. But it's been interesting. This was 3 or 4 plants that we let to go to seed, just because I thought I dug them out and I hadn't, so they were just left in. So really you can see how many seeds you do get if you do collect yourself. If we keep coming around again, on the back here is our sort of pergola area. We've got a few late little flower plants that maybe I'm just going to put in these gaps, to be honest. And then we've got some hanging baskets that are starting to grow all right now, actually, that are up on this pergola area. We definitely need to have a little bit of a tidy up. You can see the hanging baskets over here have strawberries in, some alpine strawberries and just some normal type strawberries as well. The roof on this pergola needs sorting out. It was falling apart anyway, and in these recent storms it's just completely broken apart. So again, that's going to have to be one of our jobs for the autumn and winter. And we're on plot 2B and we're in the fruit cage. And I'll be completely honest, we have done nothing in here in at least the last month. There's definitely some weeds that are coming up around the slab areas that we need to sort out. But some of the fruits in here are doing brilliantly, some not so good. So let's have a look around at what we have got. And we'll start behind me here with this plum tree. This is a Victoria plum tree, and this tree is doing amazing. A couple of months ago, I don't think it was last month's video, but the one before, we were talking about there was a really bad problem with whitefly on here. There was a lot of aphids, it was very sticky from the sap, and it didn't look brilliant, to be honest. But we did a bit of pruning, and the rains really helped with that, and it is picked up, and the crop looks brilliant. So I'm really happy about that. This tree was actually moved 2 years ago. I didn't know if it's going to actually even survive, so to see it in this sort of condition with fruiting is really pleasing. The other fruit tree that we've got, which is just behind Anthony, is not looking quite so good, but this is the first year that it has we have pruned it properly, and the first year that it has actually produced any fruit. So it's good that it's got some fruit. The shaping we've done okay with, and I think next year we will be able to get it into that full sort of fan position. So that's okay. These strawberries have done brilliantly. There's lots of runners that have been set from these strawberries, and we will take these and we will put them into that bed that we were talking about setting up on plot 4. So it's a mixture of the few varieties of strawberries. The blackcurrant bushes, that's where it has been some good and some bad. So some of these blackcurrant bushes, like this one that I have just got here, is definitely not looking the best. I am not sure why this has happened. I'm presuming that it's to do with the droughts. The other blackcurrant bushes in here look pretty good. Half this bush is looking healthy and half not. So I'm really presuming it's just because it rained. We had lack of rain probably about up to at least 8 weeks here. The last few weeks has been loads of rain, but I think the damage had been done on this plant. If we have a look at the blackcurrant behind me, however, this one you can see looks great, and there is a lot of fruit growing on this. So these are two bushes that are right very close to each other. Just what happens in gardening, we do have a lot of different cuttings, so we've got loads of blackcurrant cuttings, so I'm not worried about it. I will just get a new plant that will grow in this section, or we'll try pruning it down. That's part of the fun of gardening. Blueberry plants are looking great. They are full of fruit. There's about 4 or 5 large tubs of blueberries in here, and they're all looking brilliant. They're slightly different varieties, and some of them are starting to sort of ripen up into that nice bluey purple colour. The red currants are all just about ready to pick. They are really good, actually. Tastes great, but they are quite sour. But that's what they are, red currants. But I think the pruning on this, we did a good job, and it set a lot of fruit. Even on this one bush, there's a lot. So we do need to get ahead and start picking those. One of the things that sort of worked and hasn't worked has been the gooseberries. If you look behind me, we've got another primary example again. I think this gooseberry did not like the drought, so we've had the same problem. But the gooseberries that are further behind do look a little bit better. We do need to start picking these. They are definitely just about starting to ripen up. But we do have a problem in this corner, as you can clearly see, with bindweed. I'm really pleased now that I planted these in these pots, because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the pots and I'm going to try and get this bindweed out of this corner. It is definitely just coming probably from underneath where those compost bins are from the plot in front, I think. So it's only in this section. We just don't want to allow it to grow, particularly with the fruit cage. We've given it a lovely nice netting to climb up, and it will go crazy if we leave that. So it's a good job that we have made this accessible. It gives us an opportunity to sort that out. So overall, all looking pretty good. Let's have a look at the blackberry. I was going to say tayberry there, but it's actually a thornless blackberry. And let's see what's going on in that corner. So this thornless blackberry, there is definitely fruits that are set on here, as you can see in this section. Remember, these plants tend to fruit on last year's wood. So these new branches here, we are going to have to tie in, for example, along here, which I will have to do. There's another one there as well. They're starting to escape. So let's try and keep that in. We will have to get that one out and tie this in. But we do have some fruit. It was only planted a year or so ago, so it's quite a small bush at the moment. But this will continue to develop and get more longer, more quality fruiting areas each year. Overall, that is looking pretty good. So let's go on and let's see some of the trees that are in the orchard area. And in the orchard area, everything is looking pretty good, actually. It does need a bit of a tidying up, but these little pears look really, really healthy. And you know what? There's quite a lot on that really tiny tree, which is good. And the fig is looking great. It's absolutely full of fruit. We did a really heavy prune on this last winter, and I think that has paid off. It's something we're going to have to probably do every year to keep this tree under control. We do not want it getting too tall. This apple tree here again, you know what? There's not that many apples that I can see on that tree. But this little one in front of me is doing a lot better. So it's funny, isn't it? So we'll probably have to, this is one that I was going to graft onto actually. So I think I might prune this down quite heavily in the winter and graft onto half of that. It's got two sort of main leader branches off the main stem. So what we'll do is we'll maybe do 2 types of that. So for some reason that hasn't set that much fruit, but this one definitely is okay. The cherry tree in the background is absolutely massive, and as we said, that is going to come out. We've let it blossom for this year because it was just so beautiful and it's so good for the wildlife, but that is time for that to come out, and that will have to come out before this autumn. It's absolutely massive. We have size limits on trees on our allotment, and that is definitely over that limit. We never get the fruit. Let's just get it out and start again. So I think that is going to have to be a job for the end of this summer to autumn to sort that out. Let's just move into the polytunnel. And quite a bit has gone on actually since last month in this polytunnel, because we have sorted it out and we have planted some things in here. I was a bit undecided in how to use this polytunnel for this year. We were really behind with the planting because of the sciatica that I had, and I didn't want to fill this up with plants that were going to fruit really late and therefore stop us planting over the winter to use this for winter crops. But I had so many chilli plants, so I've decided to use this mainly for chilli plants here, just an overflow for the chilli plants. I don't know how these will do, but it just fills the space. There's a few more chilli plants down here, and then I have in my own nice little basil farm in here. That's Basil the plant, not Basil our cat. And in here we have got some Thai basil, and then we have got mixes of Genovese basil and dwarf Greek basil in this section here. These will come out quite quickly, and then it will allow us to plant those autumn crops that will grow over the winter, which is great. And one thing that was brilliant to see, we're going to end on this today, was that our apricots are starting to change colour. They definitely look yellow rather than green. So by next month, maybe we will have picked some of our own fresh apricots. So if you've enjoyed the video today, please like, comment and subscribe. It only takes a minute, but it really helps our channel. Take care everyone. Bye. Bye.